a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by Billy O'Connor and Frank Pace.
Billy Van Zandt.
Billy Van Zandt, the prolific playwright, producer, author.
Why are you introducing
This
me?
is Billy's new book. I read it twice. Get in the car, Jane. Adventures in TV Wasteland. And what I found interesting.
Can you let him say hello?
I will. I'm going to give him. I'm giving him the lead now.
Can you let him say hello?
I'm giving him the lead now.
For Christ's sake,
I'm about
Billy.
to let him in now.
Holy Jesus!
I'm exhausted already.
All right, look, I'm going to shut up and let Billy talk. But I was going to give him a lead, but no worries. Go ahead.
So now I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. Thank you for having me, guys.
What I was going to say was, because of our book, If These Lips Could Talk, both of these guys worked together on numerous television shows. And, of course, reading Billy's book and working on Frank's book, you get a different perspective of each show. But the one thing you guys both agreed on was that working on Daddy Dearest, Don Rickles' show, was the most fun you ever had on television.
Yes.
So I'd like Billy to start with
Absolutely. Richard Lewis had come to us and asked if we would write a show for him and Don Rickles. And Don was, of course, Don Rickles, and who wanted to say no to that? So I said yes immediately. We wrote the show. I had known Don before. We had done an episode of the Newhart Show. That was my first show on television. And Don was the guest star on that. And we had fun doing that. They flew us out. It was a different time back then. They flew Jane and me out to Vegas to watch his act so we could write a better script. Like, who didn't know him already? But they did that for us.
And Jane, of course, is
Jane Milmore, my partner.
Beloved partner.
46 years we were together. And she just passed away a few months ago. But this book, she was around for this book, I will say that. I'm happy to say. She helped me edit it. She picked out the pictures and she corrected a few stories in the book.
Eric, do you have a picture of Jane you can put up on the screen?
She at one point said, "I didn't throw a teapot at you. I threw a vacuum cleaner at you." I was like, "Oh, okay, we'll change that."
Stickler for detail.
Yes, she was. So I put this book together. Mostly, it started out as a book for my kids, so they understood what Daddy did at the studio, because all they knew is I'd made sitcoms. They knew about my plays because they'd been in rehearsals with me and seen the whole process. But for TV, they had no idea. So I started with one chapter. I think the first chapter I wrote was about Newhart, and I went on and on. I had kept journals on all the different TV shows we worked on, and so each chapter is a different show that I worked on, and all the behind the scenes stuff, all the gossip. I kept a couple things out, because Frank had to put something in the book. So we worked. How many shows did we work on together?
Well, that's a funny story. We never really had a hit together. We did.
So it was you.
We did 4 or 5. We did 4 or 5 shows. We did Staten Island. 902. What it wasn't 902. It was
10309.
10309. Funny story about that. Les Moonves was the president of Warner Brothers at the time. He gave us one note. We had a phenomenal table reading.
Yeah, we did. Phenomenal
table reading. Joel Zwick was directing. He gave us one note going out, and Billy will tell us what that note was.
Can I?
Yes, you can.
Okay. We had got no notes from the studio or the network, nothing. And all we heard was, "Better not fuck it up, Joel." That was our note.
Is that normal that you don't get any notes at all from these guys?
No
feedback?
No. Everybody, they always want to put their 2 cents in so they can take credit for the success of it later.
And that was the first one. The second one we did was Bless This House, which...
Yeah, Andrew Dice Clay and Kathy Moriarty.
Which was gone after 17 episodes.
Not because of us.
No, it's not because of us. It was because of Andrew.
Yeah.
I tell that story in the book.
Yeah, you tell that story in the book.
We had great rating. We had if I remember correctly, and this sounds stupid to even say it, we had the last show that had as good ratings as we did was Good Times in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
In that time slot. We still got canceled.
Yeah, but that wasn't our fault.
No.
That was It was a touchy situation.
Touchy situation. That's catchphrase for Dice, right? That's his catchphrase.
That was the catchphrase he attempted to have.
Well, I liken Daddy Dearest in the chapter you wrote about Daddy Dearest. Of course, knowing Frank, I picked that out and just stuck in my head. You said that the show was going so well and everything, you couldn't believe that it was getting canceled. And they put on some piece of shit that was 49 out of 50 or something. What was it, Bakersfield or something?
No, that wasn't
Daddy
against us.
Daddy Dearest was off the air as soon as it was on the air.
We did 13.
That was Rickles' show, right?
Yeah, that we did 13, but we were canceled with 4 to go.
Right, that's
and
right.
We were canceled. I'll never forget this. We were doing a Thanksgiving episode, which is maybe the best episode
That was good.
of Thanksgiving shows I ever did.
Yeah.
And Don said, "What the hell are you talking about? We're canceled, for Christ's sake." And his wife,
Renee
Taylor goes, "We're canceled." She thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And Alice
Ghostly was the aunt.
sitting in the back room, and she was just minding her own business in her own different world.
That's right.
It was really funny.
Well, as Billy tells in the chapter, he says, and then our producer, Frank Pace, just kept walking around with his head down, muttering, "Cocksuckers, cocksuckers."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's Frank."
Yeah. We unfortunately, that show debuted at the beginning of the height of political correctness, which killed us. Because how do you do Don Rickles and tell them not to say certain things? You know.
Yeah.
Remember that line you wrote for Hervé Villachez?
Oh yes. You got the phone call. Well, this was two weeks after the man died, and on that show, if it was over the line, it went in the script.
Yeah, and of course, Hervé Villachez was a little person who starred in Fantasy Island. So
Don and Richard are in jail, and there's a flasher, and he flashes Don, and Don says, "Well, I see what Hervé Villachez left you in the will," and it was tasteless. 2 weeks after the guy died, we did that joke, and we get a phone call, and
Ronnie Kaplan,
and she said, "Hervé Villachez's wife is on the phone." I said, "I'm not taking that call." And they came in and they told us that she said that we were disgusting. We were tasteless, and it wasn't true. He was hung like a horse. It's like, thank you. Thank you.
Nice talking to you. See you around.
Yeah. We had fun on that show. I would have done that show forever. Most shows, when you rehearse them, I think we did Monday to Friday shoot. So on Monday, you do the table read. You rehearse during the week, and you have empty bleachers. And then on Friday, you fill it up and shoot the show. Our show had people in the bleachers all week long because everybody on the studio lot would come just for the hope of Don insulting them between rehearsals. Mm-hmm. So it was great. I just loved it.
Well, that's one thing about comedy. They say stand-up comedy is not monologue. It's about dialogue. It's about getting the audience involved. And who was better than Rickles at that?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did you saw Rickles perform live?
Oh, well, now, I guess finally probably 15 times.
And never saw the same act.
18 times. Well, I saw elements of the same act.
Yeah.
Elements of the same act, but he was always vamped for whoever was in the front rows.
Yeah, to get insulted by him was a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing, when you're working with a stand-up in sitcoms, you're there to showcase what that person is famous for, basically. So to take Don Rickles and try and turn him into something else, halfway through the show, they tried to turn it into the Kindly Grandfather show. I was like, that's not the show.
Well, but that's because we had issues with Richard.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah. Richard was just...
Don was supposed to do 2 scenes a night.
Yeah.
If Don was in 2 scenes a night, it would be good. And it was supposed to be Richard's show.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
It was. Oh, sure. Richard was.
I didn't know that.
Richard was a big star in the 90s. He was coming off Anything But Love,
which I did.
It was his follow-up show to Anything But Love, and it was a star vehicle for Richard. Don, Barney Martin, Renee. They were also supposed to be supporting actors. Mm-hmm. But as the show progressed, Don sort of seized the spotlight from which Richard, there was no unwillingness from Richard to let it go to Don either. So, and Don, had trouble learning his lines. So as the season progressed, we would do outtakes. We started out with 15 minutes of outtakes on the end credits as the end credits were rolling. And I think the last episode we went out with 3 minutes and 50 seconds worth of outtakes because the outtakes were as funny as the show.
And Frank, I will say, my favorite producer I ever worked with was Frank. We're not done yet. But Frank had the sense to tell the camera guys, never turn the camera off. When the director says cut, leave it running. Because the second that they yelled cut, Don would start doing his act and attack the cameraman, attack the audience, attack whoever was standing around. And they were hilarious. Half of them, you can see probably 4 hours of it on YouTube now, I think.
There's over an hour and 15 minutes on YouTube.
Of outtakes.
Yeah.
So as a writer,
some of them are really inappropriate.
Of course.
How the hell do you write for a guy who's a stand-up comic like you did D.L. Hewley? I mean, how do you write for a guy? His whole deal is his persona. How do you go about writing for a stand-up comic?
You have to really study the act. You have to really see what makes them funny. The problem with writing for stand-ups, and that's pretty much all I've done in sitcom is take comedians and done shows for them, is they've been their own writer, director, producer, and performer for probably 10 years before you meet them. And then they come to you and you have to say, I know you've been doing this for 10 years, but now I'm in charge. I'm going to tell you what to do. There's a weird trust thing that goes on the second you start that job. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. I write about one of those in the book. But really what my job is to study the comedian, see why they're funny, take pieces of their act and try and incorporate that into a show. In the same way, if you're not the executive producer and if you're simply a writer on a show, your job is to imitate the writing of the executive producer. You want every show has to have one voice. So I may think I'm funnier than the guy running the show, but I have to write whatever he wants.
Right. Unless you're David Steinberg, who comes in and David Steinberg thought he was funnier than Don and Richard combined.
David's a funny guy.
He's a funny guy in his own right. He's not funnier than Don Rickles.
Initially, Steinberg did all the jokes about the Bible, right? This is how he got started with Lot turnaround, Lot and his wife and everything. You remember that?
Yeah, Smothers Brothers. He got the Smothers Brothers kicked off the
air. Which wasn't easy, right? And they were getting away with murder.
Yeah.
So let me tell you my favorite Don story. We're in Atlantic City. And I was at a baseball card show with Rod Carew because I represented him for 40 years. So Don was performing at Atlantic City. So I called his road manager, Tony O, who's really good friends with Billy and myself. And I said, Tony, Frank's here. Can I get a couple tickets for myself and Rod Carew? He said, sure. So at the end of every show, Don always introduced any celebrities in the audience. So Don goes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to have in the audience an American hero, Rod Carew, Baseball Hall of Famer, 3,000 hits, 7 batting titles, 328 average. Rod, can you stand up and say hello? Rod stands up and waves, and then Don goes, and he's here with a fag from the FBI, Frank Pace. Now, what the hell does that mean? I don't know, but you laughed.
That's funny.
He's a fag from the FBI.
His delivery was amazing. The timing.
It was funny. He was the sweetest man you ever met.
Absolutely.
First of all,
absolutely.
And we went out. You were there that night. We went to dinner at this one place one time. And he's very quiet until the waiter comes over, and then he does a couple minutes on the waiter. And so as we're leaving, we're walking out, and Warren Beatty and Gary Shandling were walking in.
Yep.
And Don stopped in the hallway, and he must have done 20 minutes just ripping these guys to shreds.
It was outside Adriano's restaurant in.
Now it's Vibrato. Yeah. And he just destroyed him. He talked about how big Warren's head is and how it looked like a light bulb, and he just kept going and going, and these guys were just crying.
Shanley made love to farm animals.
Yeah, that's right. And we finally walk outside, and this is what Don was like. We walk outside, and he was just killing. And he walks outside, and he just turns to Jane and me and goes, "Did I do okay?"
And he said to me, "I still got it, right, Frankie? I still got it."
Yeah, I love him.
One time I was with him in New York, and we were outside, and a streetwalker, he says, "Can I?" He asked for a handout, so Don gave him a $5 bill, and he said, "Here, buy yourself a ranch." And the guy says, "What? No cattle?"
Like the guy was just gave himself his own back. Huh? There was I'm going to see if I can get an exclusive here.
Okay.
Because in the book,
you
mentioned a stand-up comic.
I won't. But
you won't give him his name, huh?
No.
Because I'm dying to know who it was, because it was about the porn thing. He kept wanting to have a
talk to me later.
Yeah.
There's you talk about a chapter in the book where I don't name the comedian we're supposed to be doing a show for, who was obsessed with porn and wanted us to turn this little nice CBS show into a show about porn. And I don't give his name, and there's reasons I don't give his name, but I can't do it.
Okay, I was just dead curious because you said the guy was funny as hell.
Funny. It was funny. Absolutely.
A terrific comic. You mentioned Bob Newhart before, and you mentioned in the book that you almost have a reference for Bob Newhart. It was one of the best shows you ever worked on.
It was the first show we worked on, and we had come from the stage. We'd written a bunch of plays, so writing 22 minutes for an episode of television was like, this is nothing. But Bob ruined us because it was the first job we had, and we worked literally from 10 in the morning and went home at 5 o'clock at night all season long. We never stayed for a rewrite. We would rewrite on the set. They'd do a scene. If one or two things didn't work, we'd quickly scramble, give them another line, and that was it. And after Wednesday night, again, that was a Monday to Friday shoot. After Wednesday night, he told us we were not allowed to touch the script. He said, "You've had 6 weeks or whatever you have to write it. Give us at least 2 days to work on it." And he also didn't like working with a laugh track. He said, "The people at home aren't stupid. They know if something doesn't work or it works. So don't cram that in there." And he had a standing reservation at 9 o'clock down the street at, I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but we'd start shooting the show at 7 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, he had to be in his restaurant. So we did one take. We did it like a play, one take per scene, move on. And that spoiled me because the next show I went to, I worked till 4 in the morning.
Chaos.
Yeah, Saturdays didn't matter. And I often said to people when I wasn't running the show and there other people were, I said, "Why do you do 3 and 4 and 5 takes of every scene? The audience is going, they're bored. They're sitting there till 4 in the morning. Why don't you just do one take?" And they say, "Well, the actors are better on the second and third take." I said, "That's because you give them a second and third take. Just one take and move on." Martin Lawrence worked the same way as Newhart. There were a lot of differences, but
you think?
Again, now you're writing. They say write what you know. You're writing comedy for you're writing comedy for Martin Lawrence.
Yeah.
That's not who you are. I mean, you're
well, I'm not Irish Catholic either, and I wrote for Newhart, so
Okay. I didn't even know he was Irish Catholic.
It's funny you said Newhart didn't like working with an audience. Gene Wilder didn't like working with an audience.
No. He liked working with the audience. He just didn't want to keep them there.
No, he didn't like the audience.
You're talking about Gene.
Gene Wilder.
Gene.
Gene Wilder didn't like the audience, and he said, and Gene was very soft spoken, and he would call me during the show. And he says, "Frankie, come here," and he said, "Why do we have to have an audience?" And I said, "Because the network and the studios feel that it makes the show funnier." And he said, "Gee, I've been known to make some pretty funny movies without an audience."
That's funny.
So he had me there.
That's funny.
Well, I remember Newhart with the button-down mind of Bob Newhart. That was what, 61, 62?
Yeah, we were very lucky because he used to warm up his own audience for our show, and he would do do bits from that live. It was
which
great.
were terrific
It was
bits.
great.
I mean, the King Kong climbing the
Yeah.
Empire State
Walter
Building,
Raleigh
Janet
and all that.
Walter Raleigh,
Yeah.
Stick the burning leaves in your mouth.
Yeah.
And he was dry and droll like that in person.
Yeah.
Was he like that?
He was great.
That was the persona. I mean, it was him.
Yeah, that was him. And just the nicest guy in the world. He used to warm up the audiences all the time, but I only saw him bomb once with them, and it still makes me laugh. It was there had just been a horrible earthquake in Armenia, and they were still pulling bodies out. And 10 minutes later, he's out in front of the audience going, "You know the worst thing about an earthquake? All the VCRs going 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock." Nobody laughed because it was inappropriate at the time, but now it's hilarious to me. But
Well, see all your stand-up comics out there. Even Bob Newhart can bomb.
the only time I ever saw him bomb.
But yeah, I think it was. I remember as a kid getting that album, and it was like one of the top albums ever released.
Yeah.
And it sold millions of copies.
Yeah.
Until Vaughn Meter came out. Talk about a bad break. He came out with the first family.
I think Kennedy had a worse break. John Kennedy had a worse
Poor
break
guy,
than
the
Vaughn
poor
Meter.
guy was rolling, right? I mean, he was on top of the world in his 20s, and all of a sudden, Kennedy gets shot.
Yeah,
Talk
rough.
about it appropriate.
Only you would call it a bad break for Vaughn Meter.
Actually, Kennedy had actually referenced Vaughn Meter when he said one time in a press conference, he said, Vaughn Meter I'm only here because Vaughn Meter couldn't make it.
Oh.
Yeah,
good.
I mean, that's how famous Vaughn Meter was at the time. Everybody had that album. Everybody.
Well,
He caught a bad break. Come on, I know Kennedy caught a bad break, but that was a bad break.
Yakov Smirnoff caught a bad break too when Perestroika hit, because all of the mystery about the Soviet Union went out the window.
Well, he's doing all right. He's out in Branson. He's got his own theater, I think.
Yeah.
Does he? Yeah.
Yeah,
And performing there as well, I guess.
I hope.
Which gets me to why you became a playwright. I mean, prolific as hell. I mean, how many did you write altogether?
25.
25 plays.
25. Started out because I started out as an actor, and I'm not a particular type. I'm not, I'm half Italian and half Dutch. But if you stand me next to a 100% Italian guy, I look like a wasp. If you stand me next to a wasp, I look ethnic. So there was no real, the agents had a hard time finding roles for me. So I started writing my own roles. And we wrote, the first play was Love, Sex, and the IRS. And I wrote that on the set of the first Star Trek movie, because I was in that. And
You played an alien?
I was,
I think
I'll do this. I'll do this short.
Well,
but-
let me hang on a second, because I think we have a picture of that
Oh.
at number 7.
Oh,
Derek, can you put up a picture of Billy as an alien?
yeah. This picture actually, if it's the one I'm thinking of, my brother used to keep this on his piano.
It's the one you sent me.
Oh yeah.
It's the one you
Yeah,
sent
that's
me.
My brother used to keep that on his piano, and people would come in and look at this misshapen thing and go, "What is that?" And he'd just casually say, "Oh, that's my brother." No explanation. But
By the way, put up number 3, Derek, if you can.
what is number 3?
Your brother is little Stephen Vance. No, number 3.
That's my brother. He's now Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's
but
you said number 3
I like him
was
better
little
than Stephen
Stephen,
Lee, I'll tell you the truth.
the guy with the bandana around his head.
that was from Anything But Love. That Jamie Lee Curtis picture.
That was another show you wrote for or produced?
Yeah. I wrote that. I wrote for that.
Uh-huh.
So I had all this makeup on, and they wouldn't allow me. The first Star Trek movie was very secretive, so they didn't want you out of the dressing room. They didn't want anybody to see it. So I thought, I'm not going to just sit here in the dressing room all day. So I had Jane bring in my Smith Corona typewriter, and we wrote ourselves a play, which is Love, Sex, and the IRS. And after we had that produced back east, we published it with Samuel French, and they sent us contracts saying, "We'll take this in your next 2." It's like, next 2?
Wow.
So let's write 2 more. And we wrote 2 more. And then the shows just took on and had lives of their own. But they were all written for Jane and me to act in.
So necessity being the mother of invention. You wanted
Absolutely.
to act and you started writing.
Yeah. And the plays brought us out to write for television. I don't know who it was. Grant Tinker, maybe? They were looking for playwrights.
That was Mary Tyler Moore, right? Grant Tinker?
Yeah.
Well,
MTM.
He was married to Mary Tyler Moore,
Okay.
but he was even bigger than Mary Tyler Moore because he was running the studios,
Right.
and then ultimately ran CBS.
So they brought us out here, and we did the very first thing we did was a backup script for a show about Louis Anderson, the comedian Louis Anderson's life. And this is my introduction to television. Sam Bobrick had created the show with Louis, and he sat me down the first day and he said, "You're a playwright, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, let me explain how it works in television. In the theater, you're the top of the pyramid, and everybody works to please you. Welcome to television. You are the blueprint, and people are going to do whatever they want with your work. Just want you to know that now." Like, okay. And case in point, the show he had created for Louis Anderson, it was about Louis's life. His father was a big band musician, never home, always on the road. The mother raised, I think there were 12 kids. And by the time it was filmed, the father worked in construction, was home. There were 2 kids.
Wow.
Had nothing at all to do with Louis Anderson's life, but that was supposedly
Amazing.
That
bad.
reminds me of a story. Didn't you write parts for yourself and Jane in Daddy Dearest?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell that story.
This is nasty. It's nasty. When Richard asked us to do this, Richard Lewis asked us to do Daddy Dearest, I said to Jane, I said, "Oh, we'll do it, but I'll play the role of his brother. 2 episodes a season. I'll do a little bit role, and you can play the secretary in the doctor's office, because that way you don't have to rehearse. You sit behind a desk like Marsha Wallace did and the other thing." And so we wrote that into the pilot, and we're interviewing casting directors, and they make up lists of all the different actors they have in mind for each role. And the woman said, "And for the brother, I thought we could use," and I said, "Oh, no, wait, that's already cast." And Chris Albrecht, who's running HBO production at the time, turns to me in the middle of this meeting and says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, that's the role I'm playing." He went, "Can I talk to you in the hall, please?" So we go outside and found that our agent never put it into the contract. So I had to cast somebody else. And I ended up talking to the president of the network, who said, "You're hired to write, not to act." It was very humiliating. And so he said, "I don't mind you acting in the show, but not right now." I said, "Okay." So we wrote ourselves little roles later on, and we're told, "You can't do that. You can't do that. Concentrate on the writing." So as soon as they canceled us, it was like, screw that. So I played a waiter. Jane played one of Richard's dates. We filmed it during the day, so nobody from the network was there to know we were doing it. It wasn't on the call sheet. And yeah, so we finally got on the show. And of course, that's the one episode they didn't air.
Oh, yeah, naturally. Of course.
Yeah.
But I tell you, as a playwright, I don't know anything about writing plays except the great playwrights I've read, of course, but you had a lot of balls. I mean, you wrote Silent Laughter.
Yeah.
You write a play without a word of dialogue.
Yeah.
And then you write, You've Got Hate Mail, and you got guys coming out reading from a computer. You took some shot there.
We did. What I continue to find is, if something scares the hell out of me, it's the right choice.
Wow.
Because the first 5, 6 plays, I didn't know how to write. I really, as an actor trying to be funny on stage. So the first couple shows of ours are like, but we learned the craft as we went. But after maybe 5 or 6 farces, and they were really broad farces, a lot like I Love Lucy, we started branching out, doing different things. So we did one show that took place entirely in the bathroom of a suburban house party. Those were a lot of monologues. And then we went to do Silent Laughter, because I was am a fan of Buster Keaton. And I thought, God, I would love to have done one of those. And Jane said, "Well, let's do it." It's like, "What?" She said, "We'll do it on stage." So I cast all these people. They thought we were insane.
Yeah.
I brought in this organist, big Wurlitzer organ. We brought into the theater. We did title cards with the dialogue written above our heads, and we didn't talk. We just acted out a completely slapstick comedy on stage in black and white, in different shades of gray and white and black. And we got great reviews in the New York Times. It was fantastic, except it was too close to 9/11. We did it right after that sometime, and nobody was going to New York to see shows. And so we did maybe 6 or 8 weeks of that. But that was fun.
I'll tell you what, Derek, can you put up picture number 1? Because Billy mentioned Lucy. And why don't you tell a little about your experiences with
sure.
Lucy?
Lucy, there she is. Lucy's the reason I went into the business in the first place. That was the kind of comedy. As a kid, I used to see that in the Lucy show. I Love Lucy and the Lucy show. And that was the kind of comedy I related to. Big physical stuff, but it was believable physical stuff. It wasn't just stupid, you know. So I used to devour I Love Lucy episodes. It was on, back in New York, it was on like 6 times a day, and I would watch all 6 times a day. And I learned timing from watching her. I learned how to write from watching the scripts that her writers wrote. And without knowing it, I realized I learned how to produce from Jess Oppenheimer and Desi Arnaz, because, you know, and the way we work together is what I hear is how he worked, basically like handshake stuff. So a friend of mine, I was in Jaws 2. That was my first movie as an actor. And Ann Dusenberry, who was also in it, got cast as Lucy's daughter on her last series. So I came out to watch rehearsal and really to meet her. In my mind, I was coming out to work with her, but nobody but me knew that. And but the first time I attempted to meet her, I was coming out here to do some scenes for Jaws 2, and Jane and I got in the car. Jane was my girlfriend at the time. We got in the car at the airport, and I drove straight to Lucy's house. I knew the address from some magazine article. And we pull up in front of the house, and I got out. Jane said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got to go meet her." And I walked up the walkway, and I knocked on the door, and a little houseboy answered the door. And I said, "Billy Van Zandt's here to see Lucille Ball." And he said, "She's not home," and slammed the door in my face. I got back in the car and drove away. 10 years later, after I had gotten to know her and invited to her house, I'm sitting in the living room 10 years later, and I said, you know, I was feeling very comfortable with my friends now, you know, my new Lucy friend. And I said, "Did you ever meet Charlie Chaplin? Because I can see his work in your work, and I never saw a picture of the two of you together." And she said, "No, but I'll tell you a funny story. Gary, my husband, and I were in Switzerland, and I found out where he lived. So we drove over to the house. But Gary wouldn't get out of the car. He hid under the dashboard. I got out, and I walked up the walkway, and I knocked on the door, and the big fat housekeeper answered the door, and I said, 'Lucille Ball's here to see Charlie Chaplin.' They said he's not home, and slammed the door in my face. And I got in the car, and we drove away." I never told her my side of that story because we had just previously been talking about the fact that her house was right on the corner, right exposed on the street. And they had just talked about, for security reasons, if any fans got out of hand, she could hit a button and bars would come down over the windows. And I thought, well, if I tell my story, they're going to kick me out of the house.
So what'd you end up doing with Lucy?
So I came out to watch Lucy work, really. And while I was there, I saw next week's script, and I see a thing that says "delivery boy." It's like, "Delivery boy? That's for me." I go into the casting director's office. I said, "I'd like to audition for this, please." He said, "We don't hold auditions. This is Lucy show. We look at videotapes, and if you don't have a videotape, you don't have an audition." I said, "Well, I don't have a videotape. I'm on vacation." So he said, "Well, then if you don't have a videotape, you don't get one, do you?" So I went out to Blockbuster Video or whatever it was at the time, and rented Jaws 2 and Taps, another movie I had done, and we pulled scenes out of it. This is Lucy's film archivist helped me actually do it, because I met him on the set too. And we put this little thing together in probably an hour. And I walked into the casting director's office, and I flung it at him. I had a lot of balls back then, I guess. So casting director, who I'm hoping will cast me, I'm flinging a tape at him, going, "There's your tape. Now give me my audition." And he said, "Very well. We'll see you tomorrow at 9:00 or whatever it was." So I show up the next day, and it was just me and Arsenio Hall, which I remember from the call sheet because I wanted to know who my competition was. And I walked in to read for Bob Carroll Jr. and Madeline Davis, who had created and written all the I Love Lucys, who were now running this show. And I said, if somebody did this to me, I think I would flip out and kick them out of my office. But I said, "Before we start, I just want to, can I say something to you?" And they said, "Sure." And I told them really from the heart, how much they meant to me and how much they taught me and all this sort of thing. And I don't know why they didn't kick me out. And then I read, and I got my laugh. It was 4 lines, I think. And I went back up to the bleachers, and a little while later, they just go next week.
Wow.
Yeah. And the next Monday, I walked onto the set, and Gale Gordon was there, and he stuck his hand out and went, "Welcome to the family."
Wow.
The hair on the back of my neck stood up. It was great.
And
That's-
you ultimately wrote a show for Lucy, correct? A retrospective?
I did. We found the I Love Lucy pilot, which had been buried for 40 years. No one had seen it. And we make a long story short, we got a hold of the copy, and the only copy in existence. And we went to CBS and we said, we found the I Love Lucy pilot. We want to do a special about it. And they said, well, we own it. He said, we know, but you can't have it unless we do a special about it. So we made a deal. We would take, I think it was like 30 minutes long, and they wanted to chop it to 22 minutes. And I said, no, you can't cut any of this. I'll fill around the pilot with talking heads, documentary style, from Lucy and Desi, because I know from different interviews they gave, they tell the story of how the show got put together. So we ended up doing that, and we didn't have a host for it, and it had only been about a year since Lucille Ball had died. So I felt a little uneasy asking Lucy Arnaz to host, because, it was bad timing. So we were in negotiations with Carol Burnett, I believe, and we got a phone call from Lucy Arnaz, who had read our script, because now, having been in charge of her parents' estate, she had to approve the script to show the footage. And she said, I didn't realize you were going to pay such a tribute to my father, and I want to host this.
And that was an hour, right?
Yeah, so it was a full hour, and we were the highest rated show of the year.
That's great.
And you got nominated for an Emmy, right?
Got nominated for an Emmy, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great.
I had learned from Frank's book, from our book, about how much Desi Arnaz meant to the industry. He
meant everything.
Yeah, but I had read years ago in David Halberstam's book about the 50s that, contrary to the trickle-down economics thing, the reason Desilu got started was because Desi Arnaz wanted a tax shelter for the amount of money that Lucy was making. And them days, the tax on Eisenhower was 91%. Mm-hmm. So it created so many jobs.
Well, he insisted that they put Lucy in front of a live audience, and most shows they do them on kinescopes back then. He insisted they film it, so she looked better, and and the people on the East Coast would get the same print as the people on the West Coast. And he invented the rerun. Without that, we wouldn't have what we have.
But it's all in television archives.
He was also he placed the couch in the middle of the set.
That's right.
He had entrances downstage,
mm-hmm.
And every time I do a show with a new director to the medium, he always the couch is always in the middle of the stage. I'm going to change it.
Yeah.
So and the sets are up, the entrance is upstage. I'm going to change it. So eventually, when the camera guys come in, they sort of laugh.
Yeah.
And then the couch always ends up in the middle of the set again.
What is upstage and downstage for the uninitiated myself?
I'll let the theater guy.
Well, downstage would be the closest to the camera, let's say, and upstage
or the audience.
Yeah, and upstage would be because in the old days, all the stages were raked, so you were literally walking downstage towards the audience.
So people could see,
because it was rent. Everything was rent.
Yeah. But you'll notice on every sitcom, there's always a dining room in the background that no one ever walks in. They're just there for show, but everything takes place right in the front. Yeah, and
so he was innovative as hell. I mean, he did. It was Desi Arnaz that was the brains of the outfit, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I was in love with Lucille Ball, not from television. I used to love it. I'm sure you're a student of Preston Sturgis and Joe
Absolutely.
All the screwball comedies. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember the Palm Beach Story. I'm sure, and Lucille Ball was in that. Did she have a bit part in that? Claudia Colbert and Captain McGlue was Joel McRae in that?
I don't think she was in that.
Oh, I thought she was.
She was in a Marx Brothers movie, I think.
Room Service.
Room Service. Yeah,
she was also in a Three Stooges short.
Was she really?
Yeah, I asked her about that, and
really,
I said, "What'd you learn?" She said, "I learned to duck." but she also told me with the Marx Brothers on the set, she said for some reason a bus full of nuns showed up to visit the set, and she said on purpose all the three guys took their pants off for the entire day. They wouldn't put their pants on just because they wanted to embarrass the nuns. Yeah. The one thing she said to me that disturbed me, and you think about it, how many people like this are there out there? These great, the immortal people. She did something in rehearsal, and I said, "Oh, that's funny." And she said, "Is it?" She said, I haven't known what's funny in 30 years. When everybody laughs at every single thing you do, you
Yeah.
can't tell anymore.
Wow,
And that disturbed me, you know.
that's amazing. Yeah, people just,
Yeah.
it's funny.
When my daughter was 6 or so, she's in her 30s now. She used to love black and white Lucy's.
Hmm.
She
Black and white what?
Lucy's.
Okay.
I Love Lucy. She would come home. Well, she would watch it every day, and then one day, she came running into us. She was about 7, I guess, and she says, Mom, Dad, quick, come here. They're making new Lucy's in color now."
Yeah.
Of course, the immortal scene of her with the pastries with her and Ethel and that's
my
real
favorite.
slapstick.
That's
I mean,
that's the when people talk about, it's on the page. Her laughs may have been on the page to begin with, but watch her timing in the Chocolate Factory. That's not scripted.
Yeah.
Watch her timing. One of my favorite things of hers that she did was when she's doing the tango with Ricky and all the eggs are in her blouse and they smash. Just watch that just for the timing of how she gets the laugh as it's dripping off, and then she picks the exact right time as the audience is dipping to simply put her arms like this on top of it. You can't learn that. There's something you're born with, and she learned from Buster Keaton, actually. That's how I ended up learning and loving Buster Keaton, because when he was at MGM, he coached her basically.
really
Yeah.
the physical part of the comedy, or just
Everything. His rule of comedy acting, which became hers, was you listen, you react, and then you act. So you say something, I react to it, and then I answer you, as opposed to just me
Right.
just answering back and forth. And just watch him and watch her. You'll see the same similarity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what's the smallest residual you've ever gotten?
Smallest?
Yeah, I
don't get small residuals.
I got a residual the other day for $1.11.
I honestly, I don't know. Probably one of my acting auditions, probably like. Although I was going to say, no, Jaws 2 still pays. That's the show that
Really?
will never end.
Do you, Derek? Why don't we put up a photo of number 6?
What's number 6?
It's
Is it me and Jamie Lee Curtis
There
again?
you go.
Oh, that's my.
stuff.
That's actually me doing a death scene that they had. I didn't know whether I was supposed to be the last death in Jaws 2, and it was going to be a very gruesome death where they see me swimming towards shore, and then I'm catapulted towards shore, and Roy Scheider was going to pull my hand and pull me out and only take this much of me out of the water and then drop me back in. And they said, because the long story, there were 2 versions of the movie. There was a definite R-rated version. They fired the director, the writer, and most of the cast. They kept me and a couple other people, got a new director and new script, and everything became brighter and cheerier, and it was a PG movie. My death would have made it an R movie.
So you're just pulling the top part of your body.
Yeah,
There's
it
nothing
would
left.
have been gruesome. So they decided after that, we can't do that. Let's do where I think they made casts of my legs, and I was supposed to be on the pontoon like that, and then you would see the shark chew the bottoms of my legs off. It was just as gruesome as the other thing. So they changed that. Then they had me on top of the pontoon there, but they had a stuntman do this. And the ropes around my waist, scuba divers underneath that pontoon. And then when the shark came crashing down, the shark, the megaton shark on its roller coaster track, and the scuba divers and me would be pulled under the water. So I saw the footage of the stuntman, and I said, I want to do that. It doesn't look like me. And they said, no. And I said, I want to do that. And David Brown, the producer, said, okay, we'll do it, but it has to be the last thing we shoot in Florida. And I said, why it has to be the last thing we shoot? And he said, in case you die. so we
Maybe you should rethink that.
Yeah. So I did that. And again, scuba divers, ropes yanked me under, and it was fantastic. But I did not know until I went to see it in the movie theater whether I lived or died. And we shot an insert of me crawling up on the rocks, going, thank you, because that death would have made the count of deaths would have made it an R movie. So if you look at that movie's on all the time. So next time you see it, look at the last shot. The camera pulls back and you see all the surviving teenagers on this cable junction island. I'm not there because I'm dead. But according to the thing we shot, I must have swum around to the back of the island, so I'm not on camera where I'm hanging onto the
Didn't
rock.
they reissue the movie or something recently, and you're in it now?
Oh no, that picture was on. I think it was Netflix. You can rent Jaws 2, and they have that picture. And I was like, but that's not in the film. I said my death scene finally made it to the screen.
When they kill you, was it as physically demanding as they said it was going to be, or was it a real? I mean,
Knowing now what I know, it was really stupid of me to do it. Really stupid of me. I always jump into those things.
This is the book.
Yeah.
Make sure you read it. Get in the car, Jane. Pick it up. It's a great book.
Thank you.
Self-contained chapters. Every chapter's got a beginning and a kicker at the end, and yet it leads the world to the whole experience in television.
So why don't
I loved it.
we talk a little bit about your experiences are not so happy on Suddenly Susan, but can you go into that a little bit? Because
it was very peculiar. It was Jane and I were in development at Warner Brothers, which means they pay you a lot of money to come up with ideas to go sell to the networks. And while that was going on, there was a different thing going on where very talented writer named Clyde Phillips had written a drama called Suddenly Susan that Brooke Shields liked and wanted to do.
not necessarily, but Clyde was told if he could get Julie Warner or Brooke Shields to be interested in the part, they would do it. So then
that's when they switched it. Okay.
Then they switched Brooke Shields, and then once they got Brooke Shields, they said we wanted to be a multiple camera sitcom.
Now, just for our viewers, you wrote for Suddenly Susan, or you didn't?
No,
you weren't the executive producer.
No,
But Frank produced it, right? You were the producer.
he produced it.
Yes.
So this is where you're working
Yeah.
together. This is the first time you worked together?
No, this
first
was like
are you
fifth
paying
or-
attention?
Yes, I am. I just want
You
to
paid
give the
attention.
viewers a
We
little-
talked about the first time we did Staten Island, 9-0, whatever.
All right.
Whatever. The second time we did Daddy Dearest.
I
So
remember.
now it's the third time.
Okay.
Stick with
First
us,
time
boy.
was-
I'm reminding the viewer.
First time was Daddy Dearest.
Was Daddy Dearest the first time?
Yeah, because they followed Martin.
I want to say that Staten
No,
Island.
I interviewed you in my Martin office, and then we did Daddy Dearest. Then that got canceled,
Oh.
and I took the Wayans brothers. And after the Wayans brothers, we did Staten Island.
Okay.
Okay, that's nothing to do with anything. So, so anyways, there was a script that Clyde Phillips had. He was a drama writer who had turned this drama script into a comedy, a sitcom, and
It was terrible.
thank you for saying that. I didn't want to say it, but
I will.
so we were asked by the Warner Brothers, can you take over the show? And we said, no, we can't take over the show. And I said, we're going back to do a play in 2 weeks. And they said, well, can you at least give notes? Because, this is a big project for us. We don't want. I said, well, we can give you a note. Sure. So we walk into a restaurant and we're supposed to meet the president of the network. And suddenly I see like there's 50 people there with pads and pens and he
48
says,
of them are useless, by the way.
yeah, yeah. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank Billy and Jane for coming over and taking over Suddenly Susan.
That was David Gianellari, right?
Yep. And
Who was a creative executive at Warner Brothers at the time.
we did not agree to do that, but it was, at the time there's only 4 big networks. We never worked for this network before. So we were like, I guess we're doing this. But how? And so we explained the things we changed in the script. And he said, great, go to, start writing. You have 4 days until we start rehearsal. So we went back to our office and we had no idea what we were going to do. We had to sort of recreate Clyde's show and write it and cast it without having auditions, basically, because as we were leaving that meeting, it was like, if we're going to do this, who's in it? Because they couldn't change the start date because of
So you had 2 weeks.
No, we had 2 days.
Good God.
We had 2 days to write the script. And so we figured out what would work. Frank had already had the sets built for Clyde's show, and it didn't work for what we were writing. So we're suddenly like, okay, take this wall and push this there, and this will be the entrance, and that'll be the office. And we went back and we wrote it, and we ended up casting people based on, they had held auditions, I guess, a couple of days before, and I just knew names of people that they had used. So I said, how about Nancy Marchand as the grandmother? Great, we'll cast her. How about this one? Great. So we went back and we were in a panic for that whole weekend. It was like, how are we going to do this? We pulled it off. We wrote the script. We turned it in on Monday so that the crew had 2 days to do whatever they had to do, costumes, props, whatever. We went to the table read on Wednesday, I believe. And I remember Elizabeth Ashley walked in and she thought she was playing one role. And I said, no, now you're playing a romance novelist. She went, okay. and we shot the show, and there was one bar scene where Brooke is in a bar and doing Jello shots and smoking cigars and stuff, and it wasn't working.
And Brooke was delightful.
She was great. I loved working with her. I really loved working with her. And the president of the network said, okay, we're going to shut down.
Warren Littlefield.
You're going to come back. You're going to rewrite this scene overnight, and we're going to come back tomorrow and shoot this and one other scene. And I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because we got plane tickets for tomorrow night to go start rehearsals for our show. So he's like, it's 2 scenes. We'll start in the morning. We'll be done by 6 o'clock. We'll be fine. By 7 o'clock that night, we were halfway through the first scene. And it's like, Frank, you're on your own. We got to leave. And we left. We edited via Federal Express, basically. Frank did all that. And 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks from the day they conned us into being in that meeting till we turned in the finished product. And then they announced that show was on the fall schedule. So
and 2 weeks was on the full schedule, and
then
they fired you.
They said, everybody that's going to New York, let's take one step forward.
Yeah.
Not so fast, Billy and Jane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they
bailed them out, and
I still don't know why. I honestly don't know why.
I think I was
probably the plane ticket sticking out of my pocket didn't help.
No, I was told that they wanted less broad writers than you and Jane.
Maybe so.
So but
what does that mean? Less broad writers?
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean anything, but that's the excuse.
In Billy's world, less broad means less funny.
Yeah. So the show airs, and I thought, well, you know what, Jane? At least we're going to get our developed by credit. It's created by Clyde, and it'll be developed by Jane and me. And so if the show's a big hit, we'll still get credit for it. And if it's a bomb, they'll see that we had nothing to do with it, And the show airs, and it says, created by Clyde Phillips, which it should, and developed by the 2 guys that replaced us.
Unbelievable.
So I call up Frank. I said, where's our credit? You better call Warner Brothers. So I call up Warner Brothers, and they say, well, we have to please the people who are running the show. So basically, too bad. You can sue us if you want.
It was Steve Peterman and Gary Donsey.
Yeah, very good writers.
Who did a fine job on,
very good
on
writers.
the series.
They were Murphy
job.
Brown writers.
Yep.
They're really good. And I will say, Steve had the decency to call me up, and because we still had 2 years of a deal at Warner Brothers, who had just screwed us. So we were, these are the people we're working for. And so Steve Peterman calls up and says, Billy, I just want you to know, we've been offered I just want to see it's okay that we take the job. I said, of course. Thank you for calling. It's really sweet. I hung up the phone, and Jane said, you realize he already had the job before he made that call. It's like, well, yeah, I guess
it's like calling you up and saying, you mind if I date your sister? I'm already dating her.
Also, they fired the entire cast.
The entire cast. It was Brooke, and everybody else got replaced.
Everybody else but Brooke and me got replaced.
Did Brooke Shields have a stipulation before making the show Suddenly Susan that she wouldn't play a model?
She didn't. It wasn't a stipulation, but she did say that to us.
She didn't want to.
She didn't want to do the fashion business. Because we had a dinner with her the night of that horrible meeting, because I'm like scrambling. Okay, what can we turn this into? And I thought it would be fashion. She'd worked for a fashion magazine.
Right.
Said, and the one thing she said was, she said, the only thing I don't want to do is fashion. So, okay, great. So
don't make me Italian from New Jersey. No matter what you do, don't do that.
Yeah. So a couple of years go by, and we get a phone call from Steve Peterman, and he said, "Billy, you have to call me back right away. It's very important." And I thought, what they're going to, the show's going into syndication. This is when we're supposed to get paid. They're going to screw us just like they screwed us out of that credit. I know it. So I call him back and say, Steve, what's going on? We just got the audit because we all have to audit to make sure nobody gets robbed. And it's prorated according to how much a part of the show you own. So he said, are you making more money than we are off the show? I said, I don't know what you're making. It's none of my business. He said, are you making more money? I said, I don't know. He tells me how much he's making. I said, well, yeah. and he says, a lot more? I said, yeah. He said, I had to work 3 years to get this money. How long did you work? 6 months? I said, 2 weeks. And so, as I say in the book, my agent may not call as much as he used to, but now I don't care.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. And then the last thing we did, or the most recent thing, I was sitting in Manhattan in 2008, having lunch with my good friend Armin Katayan, and the phone rings. And it's Billy. He says, hey, you want to do a Disney pilot?
Oh, yeah.
I said, sure. Why not? He said, it's 22 to 28 episodes. I said, where do I sign?
Yeah.
Because, we're above the line people. Disney pays less, of course, because it was cable, but we get paid by the episode. So if we get X times 22, it's a lot more than 1.5X times 15.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, sure. And then we did Jack and Janet Save the Planet.
Yep.
On the same stage on KTLA where Al Jolson shot the jazz singer, the first talking picture.
Wow.
Yeah.
1929. Right?
It was very ambitious, and this is one of the reasons I love working with Frank, because we did the near impossible in this pilot. We did. It's a young girl who wants to save the planet, but she does everything wrong, basically. And in the pilot, she builds a wind turbine on the roof of her building, and it ends up blowing everything off the roof, including the old lady who lives there. Her dog flies off and all that sort of thing. And we ended up doing basically Harold Lloyd's Safety Last bit. We ended up doing what's the Buster Keaton thing where the wind blows. We did ridiculous special effects. Frank never bats an eye when I ask him. I say, okay, we want to do this, and he goes, oh, okay, great. I don't know who he kicks when he walks out of the room.
Do you want the eagle to enter from the camera left or camera right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, he'll MacGyver anything. If it can't be done, he'll figure out a way to do it.
And it's always under budget, and he's the best.
Well, I got to admit that I hire people, and I let those people do the work.
Yeah, but still in all, I mean, your work ethic is pretty remarkable, especially for a guy your age. You drive me bananas. I mean, you just push, which is good.
Guy my age?
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, most guys your age are dead. I mean, let's be honest. Right?
The idea that you, Zach, lived for 72 years, that's really surprising.
Well, what are you going to do? But, yeah, I mean, that's the 6 degrees of separation. I was talking to Billy before. I was astonished when I looked at your current wife, and I just put her on Facebook, and I saw we had 30 of the same friends, and I said, I never met Billy or his wife.
Current wife.
Yeah, I got you.
Current wife. Yeah, well, I mean,
So we're talking about ages. So we're about 210 years of experience between us. Derek, do you have a little game we can play?
What?
Derek will put up 5 phrases of current lingo, and we'll see if we can guess what they mean.
I have 23-year-olds. I'll probably be good.
All right, so let's see the first word.
I should not have said that. But
I'm hip. I'm going to be good with this. I'm hip.
Well, this is the name of the game.
How asleep to the culture are you?
Okay.
Okay. So what's the first word? Just say it first. We don't have to see it.
First word is big yikes.
Big yikes. That's got to be
big yikes.
Yikes. Y-I-K-E-S.
Yes.
Y-I-K-E-S. That's got to be
yikes.
An expression of alarm of
it's
great
self-explanatory, right? It's
like holy shit.
Holy shit.
Holy shit. Is that correct?
Actually, I'll put up the definition for you.
Uh-oh, that means we're wrong.
Big yikes is a more intense version of yikes. It is so very
Yeah, it's
embarrassing.
holy
that-
shit.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
it says holy,
Holy
shit.
shit.
Why can't it? Why? Hey, Derek.
Put 2 words up
why
there.
can
Holy
you? Why
shit.
can you just put up holy shit?
Well, I wanted to give the exact definition.
Okay, so we're 1 for
So-
1.
That was the easiest one.
Okay, give us another one.
All right.
Why don't you tell us what it is while you're getting
Extra.
it up? Extra.
How is extra a new word?
Well, what does it mean in current day lingo?
There's new definitions for extra right now.
Extra would be
Additional.
a girl on the side. How about that?
A gumad.
A gumad.
Anybody else?
The beard. She's my beard.
Okay, what's it mean? Extra, unnecessary
Oh,
over the
how
top.
about that?
Okay,
Yeah, I wouldn't
All
have
right.
got that. It means
The
over
next-
the top.
plus the
That's-
next
Next
word.
one is fire.
fire. Oh,
Hey,
Billy.
right in my alley.
That's
yeah.
yours. You have
I
to
know
take
what they
this.
look like, and I know how to put them out. What is it? Oh, fire means that's like extraordinary. That's wonderful. It's fire. It's funny. It's cool.
Whoa, look at the chops.
oh, he's a
Hey,
fireman.
I'm
That's his
hip,
business.
man.
He's a fireman.
I'm hip.
Fire. Okay,
Really
next.
cool and amazing.
All right, hold on here. Oh, apologies.
Oh, okay. Well, I knew that one anyway.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay,
fit.
great.
Fit means you're in shape.
All right, so nobody's going to get this.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
No cap.
No cap.
No cap.
That means you don't shoot somebody. No cap.
That's the 80s definition.
No cap. It's
You don't sleep with the fishes.
no limit on what you can. No, there's no upside. There's no downside.
Anybody else?
No.
No,
Okay.
I'm gonna pass.
To lie about no cap
Means to tell the truth.
Wow.
No cap means
Oh.
to tell the truth. Why? Why do we got to reinvent the language? Like, they kind of like the language the way it is.
Yeah, you like it 1980s.
If
I
the
don't- yeah,
language wasn't
1980s is fine.
reinvented, we wouldn't have a language right now.
That's
Well, I
true.
tell you what, man. It's often been said that the Irish taught the British how to use their own language.
All right, last one.
Okay.
Oh, this last one. Okay.
Last one.
What's the word?
Shade.
Oh, throw shade on somebody.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, look at
Come
that.
on.
Good-
No,
Come
yeah,
on, Derek.
good word.
You
What
got
is the definition, though? When you're throwing shade, are you throwing something good at him or throwing something bad at him? I still don't get it. You're throwing shade.
Bad.
That's true. You're throwing something
It's
bad
bad.
at him?
bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you guys got a pretty good score.
Yeah, so remember that next time you come up with.
This is 210
Wait
years
a
of
minute.
experience.
Oh,
here.
yeah, that's right.
That's
You're
right.
So try a little harder, Derek.
Oh,
Next
come
time.
on. Come on.
Next time.
You guys did great. I'm surprised.
Well, I know some of that because my one of my sons is a hip hop producer. You know.
Oh, really?
He does stuff for Atlantic and Def Jam and all this other stuff. And he called me up. He said, "Dad, I'm getting my first gold record." I said, "You're getting your first gold record? That's fantastic." I said, "Who's the artist?" And he said, "This guy Melly." I said, "Melly? I've never heard of him." He said, "Oh, he's been in the news lately." I said, "Oh, he's been in the news?"
Oh, yeah.
He said, "Yeah, he was arrested for killing a guy in Florida." So I said, "Well, maybe he'll kill somebody else and you get a platinum record."
And Billy, you got twin sons?
Twin sons.
They're
That's
both soccer players, right? I understand.
great soccer players. William played for Brown University, and Walker did not play for Marist College because he didn't want to practice 7 days a week. So instead, he made an intramural team that beat the Marist soccer team. And he's a designer, streetwear designer, and yeah, they're both great. They're both great.
That's a funny story, right? You're going to kill another guy, you're going to platinum out of it.
What else do you want to talk about?
I got another question. Have you guys seen the Beastie Boys documentary?
I have not.
No.
Mad Hits, but I know, but Mad Hits with Rod Carew is in it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
How was that Mad Hits with Rod Carew?
Well, they
in the
did
movie
Beastie
about-
Boys did a song, and that one of the lyrics was, "I got mad hits with Rod Carew."
Is that right?
Yep.
Mm.
I wouldn't know the Beastie Boys if I tripped over 'em.
And then I have another question actually.
Okay.
I'm wondering when you and Frank were
In our prime,
in
don't
your-
say it.
That's next year.
Yes, when you guys were in the middle of the height of your success back in the day, did you feel like big shots?
You didn't have to say back in the day.
I've never felt like a big shot for a day in this business.
No.
Not a day.
No,
Not a day.
because instantly people make you feel like crap.
That's
So
what
no,
what I was wondering.
no,
That's
you-
like the compliments you get from a woman. You don't look bad
I know.
for your age. You're a good-looking guy for your age.
I know that I've been very lucky, and I never took anything for granted. I just kept working and kept trying to do the right thing and do the best show that I can do. And if I was lucky, I'd get another job.
And we always had three things going at once. We'd either be working on a play for back east, we'd be filming something, and we'd be writing something at the same time that we're going to go sell next time. So we didn't really have a lot of time to bask in anything. We were too busy working, really.
Right.
And the way I found out on If These Lips Could Talk, I've always maintained my relationship. You know, Billy and Jane and I always would get together for lunch, and we haven't worked together since 2011.
Yeah.
But we still have lunch occasionally and still see each other. I talk to Brooke Shields all the time. I talk to Candace all the time. I maintain these relationships, and I really think that's important.
Well, it don't cost you nothing to be nice, and it wasn't out of the blue that he called you up to work on the Disney program. You know, I mean, because he was in your mind, right? This business is about relationships, right? I mean, even as a comic, you're not going to pick a guy to go on the road with you just because he's funny. You got to be with this guy for 6 months. You got to get along with people.
And we've always been really loyal. We use the same actors all the time, and through Frank, I've had the same. Most of my shows had the same crew, and they were all great. You know,
well, because I hire people that I can rely on.
Yeah, and they come across and they do the job.
You have to rely on people in our business, because if somebody says I got a shot before we were video assisted and everything, they were either telling you the truth or they were wrong. You didn't find out to the editing room.
That's right.
So somebody says I got the shot, they got the shot. Somebody says I got the props, they got the props. If hairdressing says I got this, don't worry about it, they got it. Don't worry about it.
That doesn't seem nothing new to show business. I mean, you look at old John Wayne movies. He worked with Ward Bond. He worked with a certain cadre of guys. You know, Gabby Hayes or whatever. They made the same amount of movies together.
Yes, but
it makes sense. If you
people don't do that today.
They don't.
No, they just hire whoever they can get. And of course, it's very competitive. Well, 6 months ago it was very competitive because there were so many people making so many shows, and television hasn't developed new camera people and new sound mixers and new crafts people. So the good ones get scapped up fast.
Yeah.
So.
Now, why is that they haven't developed more? Because of the COVID, or just because of people don't go into that line of work, or why?
Well, there was a period of time where sitcoms were getting de-emphasized, and that was before Disney Channel, before Nickelodeon, before all of these people came back that put a demand on created a new demand for technical people that were camera operators, that were stage managers, that were trained in the sitcom experience. So people had to learn it on the fly all over again. So I think that if you go on any sitcom stage, you'll see a lot of people over the age of 50 running cameras and doing the work, because it's pretty demanding work, and it's pretty exacting work.
You got your start in show business, according to the book "Getting the Car Jane." Again,
Thank you.
A chorus of Oliver, is that right? No. Singing in Oliver?
No, well, this is back in junior high. I come from a very athletic family. You would not know that, Frank, but that's true. My grandfather was asked to pitch for the New York Giants, turned it down because I didn't pay enough money. Same guy, runner-up to Bobby Jones in a couple of golf tournaments. These were really
your
grandfather.
Wow.
And my father and his two brothers were the same way. Then it comes to me. My father, I remember in 7th grade, my father says, "So you trying out for the baseball team?" "No, I'm going to be in the chorus of Oliver." ruined his whole year. And I will say, you can't do the kind of comedy we do on stage without being in athletic shape. But not right today. But no, so that was the first little bit of acting I did, and then I had good drama teachers though. They really encouraged me. I actually wrote the play that the school put on in 9th grade. It was my first musical, and
so you wrote the music for it too?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question about Stephen.
Yeah.
But can you find a picture of Stephen? Don't put up
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Don't put up Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie and Stephen have the exact same birthday, as a matter of fact.
That's Stephen pushing my book.
Oh,
it's really, really
there you
cool. That's not the picture he wanted to put up.
but that's okay.
That's all right.
I didn't know you had that.
That
That's
was Stephen pushing my book. That was a big shot for me that he did.
So
Yeah.
when you guys were coming up in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
did you know that did you both aspire to go into this business, entertainment business?
Stephen was completely lost until he found rock and roll.
Mhm.
That's just he says that all the time. Back then, every other house had a garage in it, literally rehearsing in the garages, and that was where once he saw the Beatles, he discovered what he wanted to do. I knew I always wanted to perform. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know where to go, what to do. We didn't have any show business in our family at all. And he didn't hit with, he was touring with the Dovells and the oldies circuit while I was in high school. And I think he went back to Bruce, because he had been with Bruce Springsteen earlier. But he went back to Bruce, I think in 75 was Born to Run, if I'm not mistaken. And from then on, they hit. But I didn't have.
He sort of stumbled on it, and you sort of stumbled on it also.
We both worked very hard at what we were doing.
There's no doubt about that.
But I will say we got a great work ethic from my father. My father was an ex-Marine, and he taught us, I don't care what you're going to do, if you're going to dig a ditch, it's going to be the best ditch you ever dug in your life. So we were always, my sister too, she's a writer. The three of us, we had a very good work ethic, and then we had my mother, who had the safety net of we're here for you if things don't work out. There's always that. So between that and my father, we were good. Steve, I remember as a teenager being told, "Go outside and play. Dad has to have another talk with Stephen." So yeah.
Did he drop out of high school?
He graduated to please my mother, but my father kicked him out of the house at the age of 16. Because of the long hair and everything that went with it, I guess. And he lived with his high school girlfriend for 2 years, I think. And then, he and my father finally got along, after that. But
well, before we close, I'm going to ask you to do two things, Derek. Can you put up the picture of Billy and me at the softball game? Because we look. There's what we looked like once at a time.
When you guys were big shots.
That was a Bless This House. I couldn't remember what show it was. That was the Bless This House baseball team. Frank always put the best show teams together. Half of our PAs were terrible PAs, but they could play baseball.
Frank, you look like a jazz trumpeter in that picture.
And we always used to have two women on a team. Yeah. So the women were always great softball players.
That's right.
Because usually in a co-ed softball league, the women are the weak links. Not on our softball team. The women were the first links.
I used to play a lot. Our Martin team was quite good, and I played on the Star Trek team when we were shooting the movie too.
And the last thing before we close, can you put up the picture of Billy and Jane again? Because I want to pay tribute to Jane Milmore, who passed away in March. She was a great gal, a good friend, a terrific writer, and sleep well, Miss Jane.
Yeah.
And again, the book, one more time, Get in the Car, Jane. I got to tell you, it's a really good read, man. Really good, self-contained chapters. Funny, quick, terse. And I would recommend it highly. Really good book.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thanks,
guys. Everybody.
You bet.
We'll see you next week.